Because individuals often have multiple life problems, they may require services ranging from vocational training to medical care to assisted living. It's not unusual for services to be duplicated or ineffective when a case manager is not utilized. A case manager can be a strong advocate for a person to help locate appropriate and accessible services. Treatment Improvement Protocol, TIP, otherwise known as TIP 27, is a comprehensive case management for substance abuse treatment catalog, which suggests 3 different models for establishing linkages to provide for interagency case management. These are formal referral sources. First, there's the single agency, then there's an informal partnership, and the third one is a formal consortium. You can think of the formal consortium as the triage center that's located on the Sales Care Ortez campus. So let's look at the single agency model. This might be how an individual case manager might see themselves within one agency, in fact. In the single agency model, relationships with other agencies are established as needed to meet the needs of a particular client, with the single case manager retaining full control over the case. Often this model is used to meet acute needs in a system where no partnerships have been established. While this model has the advantage of providing a single point of contact for the client, it may limit the array of services available and may require considerable time on the part of the treatment provider to establish a connection and reach a suitable arrangement. An informal partnership is one in which staff members from different agencies or staff members from different programs within an agency collaborate as a temporary team to provide multiple services for clients, advising and consulting one another and exchanging information. No contractual mechanism is used in informal partnerships, which are readily constructed on a case-by-case basis. Such partnerships make more services available for the client and improve service coordination. However, breakdowns in service coordination are possible, and different problem orientations may lead to conflict among members. A formal consortium links 3 or more providers through a formal written contract. Agencies work together on an ongoing basis and are accountable to the consortium, usually with one agency taking the lead, to ensure coordination. Case managers may be supported through resources pooled from members of the consortium or by the lead agency. Among the advantages of this approach are more opportunities for coordinating care, less duplication of services, and strengthened service integration. Disadvantages are that multiple agencies' participation may raise costs, and consortia takes more time to organize and to respond to problems. Case managers must determine the type of structure that will best meet the linkage goals they have identified with the client in order to meet the client's goals. So formal referral denotes an agreed referral procedure between agencies. At a national level, the Department of Education and Skills and the NCGE promote and develop referral protocols between adult guidance and other agencies, for example. At a local level, professional judgment, experience, and good practice will normally inform your choice of referrals. It is good practice that all formal referrals are recorded, that is, documented. Informal referrals should also be recorded or documented. Some of the advantages of formal referrals include advocacy. Formal referrals provide more opportunities for case managers to advocate on behalf of their clients. Formal referrals have the advantage of identifying needs. The formal referrals are based upon clearly identified and specified needs of the client. Accuracy is another advantage of formal referrals. Referrals are accurately recorded so that client progress and outcomes are easy to track. And there's continuity as an advantage of formal referrals. Some of the advantages of informal referrals have some overlapping. Of course, there's going to be accuracy because of documentation, and identified needs are clearly stated in a service plan. But this advantage is not found in formal referrals, and that is the advantage of client empowerment. Informal referrals may enable the client to take more responsibility for their choices and decisions. An informal referral may just provide minimum details, and the client will advocate on their own behalf. The client may have quicker access through informal referrals. They may be able to access services more quickly by using informal channels. Also, with informal referrals, the client sets the agenda and is able to take responsibility in terms of time frames and follow-up. Networking and informal referrals can help to reinforce the strength of existing networks and can create opportunities for developing new ones. It's important that there's an appropriate balance between formal and informal referrals. Providers must be prepared to act as advocates for their clients when services and supports that are normally readily available and effective prove inaccessible for the client. There may be physical barriers to access in other facilities, such as stairs and no ramp, inaccessible parking, or an elevator that's frequently non-functional. Other barriers may arise from policies or procedures that should be modified to take the client's disability into account. For example, the reliance on prescription medication may initially bar a client from a 12-step program or halfway house that requires participants to be drug-free. Materials supplied by linkage agencies may be in accessible formats. For example, an agency might ask a client to pay for a set of resource materials in Braille or closed captioning on videotape materials for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. To act as the client's advocate in such circumstances may require linkages with agencies that are familiar with the requirement of the Americans with Disabilities Act, other federal legislation, and applicable state and local disability laws and regulations. In addition, case managers should establish working relationships with legal services, law school legal clinics, civil rights pro bono offices, and attorneys in order to provide clients with needed legal assistance. There are many types of creative pro bono legal services available on local, state, and national levels for both the agency as an organization and the client as an individual. While establishing additional linkages may seem an almost insurmountable barrier to overtaxed case management personnel, they are essential to increase the effectiveness of treatment and recovery services for clients. The following are among some of the most frequently cited goals that motivate case managers to establish linkages. The specific goals that resonate most with case managers and clients will drive the linkage model chosen. The specific partners who participate, the activities engaged in by the collaborative team, and the means of formalizing and maintaining the relationship are dependent on the type of goals the client has in mind. 1. To improve an individual's prognosis for recovery. These include issues such as lack of employment and social isolation, and contribute strongly to a mental health or substance abuse usage. Linkages can address some of these problems even when a client is unable to work on them in treatment. For example, most individuals who are deaf would benefit from a strong aftercare plan that connects them with an aftercare counselor in their community. 3 factors that contribute to long-term sobriety following treatment for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing are 1. Employment, 2. Having a friend or family member that they can talk to about sobriety, and 3. The availability of self-help groups such as Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. The case manager can help provide these linkages to help ensure that additional services are available. Another purpose in providing linkages is to ensure compliance with legal mandates. Legal mandates such as the ADA Americans with Disabilities Act require treatment programs to be accessible for people with disabilities. If you're referring to programs that are not accessible, you face the possibility of a class, or that program faces a possibility of a class action suit from people with disabilities. Disability advocacy groups or consultants often have expertise to share on how to meet legal requirements. You as a case manager may want to consult with the ADA to learn what is available for your client depending on their disability. To increase teamwork among providers in addressing advocacy issues. This is another goal in linking people to services. Folks with disabilities who have substance use disorders are subject to double discrimination and may face seemingly unsurmountable barriers to treatment. Many are not able to speak effectively to their own needs. In such cases, the case manager can help identify appropriate resources and enhance the client's capacity for self-advocacy. Both at the client and community level, it's critical that members of the substance abuse disorder and disability treatment communities support one another in promoting advocacy for their clients. Another goal, to improve coordination of services. A person with a coexisting disability may be eligible for services from several agencies, which might provide similar, duplicate, or conflicting services at the same time. Services provided in a fragmentary way typically prove far less effective than those that are coordinated thoughtfully. By establishing a working relationship, both on a case-specific basis and through ongoing coordination mechanisms such as task force, the case manager provides better services to the client. To access or leverage scarce financial resources effectively, the case manager can help the client make these linkages. Some people are eligible for a range of services and funding from a variety of agencies, such as state vocational rehabilitation services, centers for independent living communities, mental health services, a Department of Veteran Affairs, Social Security disability insurance, supplemental security income, workers' compensation, physical rehab, public transportation, public assistance, and managed care capitation programs for members of designated risk pools. In order to ensure that people benefit from these services, the case manager needs to have linkages that will enable them to identify what may be available for their clients and how to access available services and funding. So as we are collaborating, it is important to identify appropriate accommodations and procedural modifications that may be needed on behalf of our client. Disability resource agencies can often help the case manager better understand the nature of people's impairments and identify strategies available to increase their functionality. To varying extents, people may effectively provide information about their own disability and the accommodations that have worked for them in the past. Some, however, may be newly disabled, may not have had the opportunity to make informed decisions, or may be poorly motivated due to low self-esteem or discouragement to seek accommodations. Community linkages can help the case manager determine whether or not a disability accommodation is needed. An example is a patient with a spinal cord injury who entered a treatment program that only allowed 10-minute breaks. The patient's bladder program sometimes took 30 minutes. When she explained the problem, it was viewed as a treatment resistance and she had to leave the program. This is a clear violation of the ADA. Had the treatment staff consulted a disability organization familiar with spinal cord injury, it would have recognized her legitimate need for accommodation. Disability resource groups can help identify communication strategies or equipment that may be practical in a particular instance. Consultation should always occur early in the treatment to avoid the unfairness of last-minute adjustments. For example, a visually impaired person who needs materials in large print format should not fall behind while waiting for a resource or assignment others received from the previous day. Case managers need not be experts in all aspects of disability. There are a number of agencies available to provide specific information and assistance in these areas. The following key agencies are resources for general technical assistance on disability issues and can frequently provide referrals to linkage partners. CILs. These nonprofit organizations are under the control of people with different types of disabilities. They are non-residential and provide advocacy, information, and independent living skills training and peer counseling, among other services, for people with disabilities. CILs, or Centers for Independent Living, vary in terms of the scope and services they provide, the number of staff and their areas of expertise, consumer groups served, and advocacy activities. However, all share the goal of empowering people with disabilities to achieve the most independent lives possible. Many CIL staff will need training in identification and assessment of mental health or substance use disorders in order to function as effective partners. It is important to note that the term Independent Living Center is also used by non-affiliated centers that may provide different services such as live-in facilities. Disability advocacy and service groups. These are a wide range of advocacy and service groups organized to serve persons who have specific disabilities or share a certain type of impairment. Their missions may be to provide training, consulting services, technical assistance, or resource material. Programs that begin working with a person who has a disability they have not yet encountered should consider contacting an appropriate advocacy and service group to ask for information, to explore linkage possibilities, or to locate specialized services. Vocational rehabilitation centers. Each state has an agency focused on providing vocational training and rehab services to people with disabilities with the goal of placing individuals into competitive employment. There are field offices located throughout Florida and qualified professionals to work in an advocacy and case management role with you, the case manager, and your client. Rehab research and training centers. The National Institute on Disability and Rehabilitation Research funds over 40 training centers devoted to a specific disability or disability-related issue. Different training centers focus on topics such as spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, mental illness and long-term employment, managed care, family issues, deafness, aging, or Native Americans with disabilities. Disability Business Technical Assistance Centers are a funded network of centers providing information, training, and technical assistance to businesses and agencies covered by the ADA and to people with disabilities who have rights under the ADA. They are often well connected with disability resources and agencies within their region and can assist with referrals. In addition, they distribute a variety of resources pertinent to the ADA compliance at cost or free of charge. When case managers make referrals on behalf of the client, the case manager is an advocate for the client. Advocacy strategies case managers employ in their daily practice are not limited only to doing the right thing, care coordination, case conferencing, and outcome monitoring. Communicating among team members with the client and the client support system, and with members of the internal and external agency such as transportation and durable medical equipment vendors to discuss care, services, and related issues are a part of the advocacy. A special focus of advocacy here is with respect for the client's wishes and choices, and empowering the client to voice their own thoughts. To make appropriate referrals, case managers should have a basic knowledge about the approach and procedures used by the different programs that are being referred to, including their admission criteria. In particular, For people with disability, they should know that the program is accessible and prepared to treat people with the disability in question. A referral is effective only if the potential client contacts the treatment program. Ensuring that the contact occurs is a task of the case manager and the client. In planning all referrals for clients, it is critical to accurately assess their ability to be proactive and undertake activities on their own behalf. For some clients, the case manager may need provide only a contact person's name and telephone number and then carry out a routine telephone follow-up. For others, the case manager may have to accompany the client to the treatment program and remain with the client through the initial phase of treatment. However, the first contact is undertaken and the manner in which it is achieved should be regarded as a critical first step towards treatment, and it should not be left to chance. Resolving disagreements that might arise between members of the different teams involved in a client's care, between themselves and the client, or between the client and members of the client support system, their family. The activity focuses primarily on the client's safety and good health and promotes client autonomy, self-determination, and shared decision-making. As the client's advocate, the case manager may need to address discrimination specific to the individual's physical or mental disability, in addition to the discrimination that may occur due to a substance use disorder. The case manager should be able to determine if a discriminatory barrier has prevented a client from accessing a requisite service. When discrimination is encountered, the individual may need assistance from disability resource groups to develop and exercise self-advocacy skills. In some cases, intervention by the case manager may also be required to ensure accessibility. Linkages in these areas are extremely important because the case manager is unlikely to know how to advise or assist a client if the client experiences discrimination from another agency. Some linkage strategies: the Disability Business Technical Assistance Centers, federal enforcement agencies, statewide protection and advocacy groups, legal aid, and other community-based legal services may be able to provide clarification of legal requirements and documentation. Disability service groups can also help the client develop and exercise advocacy skills. Of course, obtaining informed consent from the client for services and treatments to be provided and tests and procedures to be completed is necessary to confirm that the clients grant the case manager permission to appeal on their behalf the decisions made by insurance companies to deny services or reimburse for care rendered. It's also required for any of the services being referred to and linkages being established. The case manager facilitates the client's informed decision and respects their right of choice. Monitor and link clients and their families with emotional support and counseling as needed to reduce their anxiety and apprehension during the episode of illness and the course of treatment. It may also mean working with the client and the support system to realize that they have to assume responsibility for their care and related decisions. This activity allows case managers to assist clients in their efforts to navigate the complex healthcare system by developing needed skills in self-management, acquiring necessary knowledge, and clarifying areas of confusion. Establish relationships with varied members of the behavioral health care team, both internal and external, to the behavioral health care agency, and is necessary for better delivery of care and services. This is an important process for effective coordination and management of care and outcomes. Establishing this trusting case manager-client relationship enhances the case manager's ability to advocate effectively with the members of the behavioral health care team on behalf of the client. Here are some other problems that you may encounter. Some people have experienced isolation because of their disabilities and may have a relatively limited social circle. If isolation was a contributing factor in the development of perhaps addictive behavior, let's say, the return to relative isolation after the intensity of treatment is of even greater concern. Because the self-care and preparation required to leave home are time-consuming and may produce anxiety, people with disabilities may have more difficulty going out to engage in social contacts. Clients who perceive options for social contacts as limited may have particular difficulty refusing alcohol from friends who visit and assume that alcohol will be shared. For example, when working with a person with substance abuse issues or co-occurring with a disability issue, some practical steps could be taken to connect the client with an accessible sobriety group or recovery community. It will be helpful to have someone available to accompany a client at first, or have him begin participating in these programs several weeks before he is discharged from a treatment program. For people whose interactive skills are limited, training in social skills or peer counseling may be helpful. That kind of training comes through mental health centers, CILs, disability services, vocational rehab programs, and programs for mental retardation and developmental disabilities. Also, the case manager could establish connections on behalf of the client with peer role models, especially those with disabilities, through a 12-step program or a disability advocacy service group. Some disability organizations such as CILs, HIV agencies, American Council of the Blind Service Centers, and Department of Veterans Affairs offices offer support groups and social activities. Various community groups may sponsor substance-free picnics and parties. Sometimes there's limitations associated with the disability, which may limit the leisure activities available to a client. For those with moderate to severe disabilities, the nature of the disability may require special attention for identifying suitable leisure activities. Outside organizations can be really helpful in finding and establishing these kinds of activities for a client. If disability groups with whom the client is affiliated use alcohol as an integral part of social functions, the case manager may want to offer awareness, education to encourage the provision of non-alcoholic alternatives. Many disability-related community organizations would be willing to develop substance-free activities if they were aware of the difficulties faced by people with disabilities leaving treatment and trying to maintain sobriety. Providers can facilitate contact with local parks and recreation departments. Case managers can easily do that. Under the ADA, public parks and recreations are not permitted to exclude people with disabilities from events for which they're otherwise qualified. And many groups offer challenging outdoor or sports activities specifically adapted for people with disabilities. Case managers can contact groups such as the Blind Outdoor Leisure Development, or BOLD, Wheelchair Olympics, and Wilderness International. The National Library Services for the Blind and Physically Handicapped can provide materials on recreational activities. State and local libraries for the blind and physically disabled will also have resources available to case managers. Sometimes the client will have employment issues and they may wish to avoid involving their employer in their recovery plan for fear of jeopardizing their employment. In some instances, the employer's policies may threaten recovery. While these are common client concerns, people with disabilities often have more difficult time securing employment, and thoughtful management of the return to employment may be especially important in the consideration of the service plan. Collaboration and problem solving. Identify and maintain information about available community resources and develop professional networks in order to meet the needs and maximize client outcomes. We talked about how consulting with agencies and organizations whose focus is on the particular needs of the client you're working with can be oftentimes helpful. Remember, The case manager will be learning along with the client in some cases when the client's needs are new to the case manager. Problem solve with the client's family, and supports. The case manager needs to know what the client wants in order to facilitate collaboration with service providers and programs. The case manager cannot assume to know without the client's input. Problem solving may mean advocating for the client. Such advocacy may mean going with the client to a first meeting or practicing what to expect in rehearsals. Self-advocacy. Case managers help the client to promote and support their own interests and well-being. This requires reflection and self-awareness on the client's part to know what does and does not work for them. Sometimes a person needs the courage to say, "I don't know what I need. Can you help me figure it out?" Case managers advocate for the client to advocate for themselves wholeheartedly. This entails addressing every possible layer that could affect the client's life: personal, community, and government. These layers have profound influences on one another, and they're therefore equally important. Client advocacy can be personal, it can be community advocacy, and it can be government advocacy. What is personal advocacy? Think about this for yourself as well as your client. Personal advocacy is being assertive and able to express your needs in a way that fosters respect. If you're too passive or you try too hard to avoid conflict, you risk your needs not being met and not being taken seriously. Also, if you don't take someone else's needs and feelings into account, you may come across as aggressive. Use positive words, confident body language, and I statements. For example, "I worry about you and feel hurt when you arrive home late without calling. From now on, please tell me if you're running behind." Personal advocacy involves practicing self-care. Good self-care demonstrates that you have value in your own self. Taking medications consistently, eating nutritious meals, and exercising are all important steps in advocating for your own mental health. Know your therapy and your medication options. When you visit with your doctor or therapist, don't hesitate to offer your thoughts on courses of treatment. By doing so, you ensure that your providers take into account your personal preferences and values. Ensure your safety. Whether or not to disclose your diagnosis takes careful consideration. People need to earn your trust before you share your vulnerabilities with them. Community advocacy means helping the client build up their team. When the client develops a good relationship with family, friends, and the larger community, they strengthen their support system. The adage that the people around the client influence their health and well-being is true, and by strengthening the whole system, all rise together. The client will need to maintain a good work-life balance. Expect fair wages, safe working conditions, and a balance between work life and personal life. It's essential to positive mental health. Asking for accommodations at work can help the client both in their career goals and the company's objectives. And have supports in place. The client may want to insist that the child's school or their parents' retirement home or their workplace offer mental health resources when needed. Government advocacy. Work with advocacy groups. By getting involved with organizations like NAMI, you help promote mental health awareness and reduce stigma. Also, creating a personal connection with people who are empathetic reduces social isolation, which can make recovery easier. Other government advocacy includes voting. The easiest way to advocate your needs at the government level is to vote for a candidate who takes your concerns seriously and understands the importance of mental health. Inform your representatives. A client can write to and meet with representatives about legislation that impacts mental health care. If their contributions could be provided in a town meeting that could help shape the environment. Clients can also support a local crisis intervention team and advocate for mandatory mental health first aid training for high school students, as an example. Mental illness can damage self-esteem, but when we self-advocate within every layer of our lives, we are able to repair some of that damage and empower ourselves. This ends our look at collaboration for effective problem solving. Please take the test that follows and remember a 70% is a passing grade.